Real-Time 1960s presents Evening Report, a complete roundup of today's news with Joe Rubenstein.
Good evening. In Texas, President Johnson meets with Chancellor Erhard. In New York, Harry Truman speaks out. In Moscow, Nikita Khrushchev predicts a U.S. defeat. Dr. Martin Luther King is Man of the Year. Roy Campanella brings Christmas cheer. And the Chicago Bears are champions of the NFL. Those are the headlines. The details after this message.
Put anything on them, but don't put them on anything but County Fair rolls. Fresher, fluffier County Fair hamburger rolls come 8 or 12 to a package. Fresher, fluffier County Fair hot dog rolls come 8 or 10 to a pack. You'll love them.
In Texas Friday, President Johnson held a news conference at the barbecue grounds on the banks of the Pedernales River in advance of a 2-day conference with Ludwig Erhard, the new Chancellor of West Germany. Mr. Erhard had originally planned to meet with President Kennedy on November 25th in Washington. At the news conference, reporters gnawed on beef spare ribs as the president made some announcements and answered questions on domestic and international affairs. The president was asked how important a part East-West relations would play in his talks with Chancellor Erhard.
The most important part. And as I have said to you on other occasions, and I want to take an opportunity to repeat, the most important thing in the world to all of us is to live in a world of peace. We have no doubt but what the Chancellor will have the same feeling, and what other world leaders have the same feeling. I once said that I had served with over 3,000 men in the Congress in 32 years that I've worked and served there, and I don't believe I've ever seen a man, either Republican or Democrat, that ran on a platform of doing what is wrong. They all want to do what's right, but sometimes their ideas about what's right and wrong differ some. And I don't think that I know any leaders of the world that wouldn't prefer peace for their people. Now the job is to how to secure it, what road to follow. And we are going to be constantly, genuinely searching for that road.
The following day, Chancellor Erhard arrived at Bergstrom Air Force Base near Austin. He was met on the runway by President and Mrs. Johnson, Secretary of State Dean Rusk, and Governor and Mrs. John Connally of Texas. Governor Connally, who was shot in Dallas on November 22nd while riding in the same car with President Kennedy, had his right arm in a sling.
You have come to a part of our country where there are many Americans whose forebears came from Germany. So while all of us are your friends, there are many who feel a very personal relationship and who look forward to meeting you. We shall be working hard while you're here, but there will also be time to meet some of our neighbors, to see us as we are, and to join us in a Texas barbecue. The United States of America remains committed to the great peaceful purpose of freedom and self-determination for all Germans and for all men everywhere. It was a threat to German freedom which took me to Berlin in 1961. It was hope and confidence in the future of German freedom that brought John Kennedy to his magnificent welcome in Berlin 2 years later. Germans and Americans still stand united against danger and strong in hope.
The President and Chancellor then flew to the LBJ Ranch to begin their 2-day working visit. It was the first major international conference for either man as chief of government. White House Press Secretary Pierre Salinger later said the discussions were of wide range, including East-West relations, means of strengthening the Atlantic Alliance, defense problems, and economic questions. This afternoon, at a festive farewell barbecue luncheon served for 100 guests in the gym of the Stonewall High School in Texas, President Johnson placed a 10-gallon hat on the head of Chancellor Erhard. After a meal of beef barbecue, spare ribs, potato salad, and baked beans, the assembled guests heard pianist Van Cliburn play Beethoven and Chopin saw a local group perform German dances and exchanged speeches of farewell.
Mr. Chancellor, we have experienced a season of great shock here in America and great sorrow. But we stand before the world this morning, one nation, indivisible, under God. We work for peace as the American people have always worked. But like those pioneers who settled this land not many years ago, pioneers who came from Germany, Mr. Chancellor, came in search of peace and freedom, we of this generation trust in the Lord and keep our powder dry. Mr. Chancellor, we shall never be too weary, never be too tired, never be too content, or never too complacent to walk another mile toward peace with honor.
Mr. Erhard flew back to Germany tonight. Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev predicted this week that the U.S. would be expelled from South Vietnam just as the French had been. The Soviet leader spoke at a Moscow reception in honor of a high-level Algerian delegation. After recalling the French withdrawal from Algeria last year and from Vietnam in 1954, Mr. Khrushchev said, quote, "While we are talking about Vietnam, I would like to say a few words about South Vietnam. The French colonizers have been replaced there by the American imperialists. I don't know how many years it will take for the American forces to be expelled from South Vietnam, but there is not the slightest doubt that the people of South Vietnam will throw out the American invaders with even less ceremony than the French colonizers." Unquote. Soviet official statements have called for the withdrawal of U.S. forces from South Vietnam on the grounds that the communist rebellion there is an internal affair. In New York City Thursday, former President Harry S. Truman spoke to reporters at the Hotel Carlyle, where he and Mrs. Truman have been staying for the holidays. Mr. Truman, after calling the renaming of Idlewild Airport as John F. Kennedy Airport a fitting tribute, was asked if it was too soon for him to give a proper assessment of the brief tenure of President Kennedy.
Yes, it is. Let the matter settle, and he'll have a good reputation, and the history is written. He did a good job while he was there. I was very fond of him. I thought he was a fine man and a great president.
Mr. Truman showed his feisty partisan side when asked about next year's presidential campaign.
There's only one man in the race, and his name is Johnson. He's a Democrat. I don't give a damn who the Republicans nominate. We'll lick the hell out of him.
Does Mr. Johnson then look very strong to you at this time, sir?
He's going to be elected. What are you talking about?
No doubt in your mind.
No doubt in my mind. There oughtn't to be any doubt in yours, because I don't know how these people can beat him with what they've got to show.
How about a vice presidential candidate for the Democrats?
I'm not nominating vice presidents. The President of the United States, when he's nominated, will name the vice president. Nobody else can do it. Didn't you know that?
Yes, I knew that.
When asked if the nation would ever see a female presidential nominee, Mr. Truman replied, quote, "Why not? They're in control of everything else. I don't see why not politics too," unquote. I'll have more news for you after this message.
Harvey, want anything special for your birthday?
Just a decent cup of coffee.
You're kidding.
I'm serious. Honey, your coffee's undrinkable.
It's pretty harsh.
Well, so's your coffee. You know, the girls down at the office make better coffee on their hot plates.
And he didn't even kiss me goodbye. You know, if I could just make a decent cup of coffee, I could relax. So, relax. Why don't you try Instant Folgers? Tastes good as fresh perked. I'll surprise Harvey for his birthday tonight.
Hey, great coffee.
It's Instant Folgers. Doesn't it taste good as fresh perked?
Better.
Better than those girls make at the office?
Honey, their coffee can't hold a candle to yours.
Instant Folgers taste good as fresh perked. Try it.
Here again, Joe Rubenstein.
Dr. Martin Luther King has been named Man of the Year by Time magazine, the first Negro to be named as such since Time began the tradition in 1927. Time's announcement said that few can explain the extraordinary King mystique, adding, quote, "Yet he possesses an inexpressible capacity for empathy that is the touchstone of leadership. It is with an inner strength so tenaciously rooted in Christian concepts that King has made himself the unchallenged voice of the Negro people and the disquieting conscience of the whites," unquote. In a recent interview, Dr. King was asked if the achievement of civil rights for Negroes in this country might benefit the majority white population as well.
Very definitely. And this is why I say that our aim in this struggle is not to defeat or to humiliate the white man, but to win his friendship and understanding. And the end is reconciliation and the creation of the beloved community. We are not seeking to annihilate the opponent, but to convert him. And this is why we follow nonviolence. I think the end of violence is to get rid of, to annihilate the opponent. But in the nonviolent movement, the end is to convert the opponent and to bring about a society where all men will live together as brothers and every man will respect the dignity and worth of human personality.
At New York City's Montefiore Hospital Friday, Claude Deleuze, a 26-year-old, 110-pound French jockey who was injured in a racing fall 2 weeks ago and is now paralyzed from the waist down, received some Christmas cheer from a man who knew just how he felt. Roy Campanella, also paralyzed from the waist down as a result of injuries suffered in a car accident 6 years ago, joked with Deleuze. The heavy-set former Brooklyn Dodger star asked him, quote, "Do you think I'd make a good jockey?" Deleuze said no. But when Campanella quipped, "Not even for an elephant?" a laugh finally forced its way from the throat of the smaller invalid. It was the first time since December 15th, when he was brought on a stretcher to the hospital, that Deleuze had laughed. The stricken jockey then said, quote, "I'm glad you came. I heard about your accident and how bravely you fought it. It was very decent of you to do this," unquote. Later, Campanella recalled that Junius Kellogg, the former basketball star who sustained a spinal injury in a 1954 car accident that left him paralyzed, had inspired Campanella with a visit after the catcher's accident in January of 1958. Now, Campanella said, "It's my turn." Sports, right after this.
What takes place in your child's mind as he watches a bubble quivering in the sunlight? What wondrous process causes his vision to grow, to develop, perhaps beyond the vision of other children? Apart from the mysteries of genes and chromosomes, there's your influence and his early schooling, of course. But the one factor that will make it possible for his young mind to grow to its full capacity is higher education. Yet today, some colleges are overcrowded, and in 10 years, applications will double. If your child is to go on to college, if he is to become one of the designers of tomorrow's world, we must provide for more and better college classrooms, the finest laboratories, and many more top-quality professors. Help the college of your choice now. For further information about the college crisis, write to Higher Education, Box 36, Times Square Station, New York 36, New York.
At Chicago's Wrigley Field this afternoon, the Bears won the NFL championship by defeating the New York Giants 14-10. The victory came by way of a strong defensive effort that prevented the Giants from scoring in the second half and through the interception of 5 of Y.A. Tittle's passes. As Tittle limped off the field, the frustrated 37-year-old quarterback slammed his blue helmet down on the frozen field 3 times. The loss was the Giants' third in 3 years in the NFL championship game. In the Chicago dressing room, Papa Bear head coach George Halas gave his thoughts on the victory.
It's a great thrill. We started out as the number 1 defensive team, and we ended up as the number 1 defensive team. And the entire club was a great team effort by everybody on the football field today. It's a pleasure to bring the World Championship back to the great city of Chicago again.
The winning Bears stand to receive $6,000 each, and the losing Giants $4,200 each. And that, for this evening, completes our look at the latest news on this Sunday, December 29th, 1963. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day tomorrow.
This has been your Evening Report, a roundup of the latest news with Joe Rubenstein.